Hello, welcome to another episode of the U. My name's Mark Brereton and I'm a technical trainer here at Cisco. This course shows you how to import data into the Cisco Secure Firewall Manager using its REST API. The course does assume you have some knowledge of the API, especially how to authenticate to it. It also assumes you have some knowledge of the Python programming language, especially how to use the request module. And it can also be helpful if you're familiar with web application frameworks such as Flask. Now, if you log into Cisco U and you enter my name in the search button and select tutorials, at the time of this recording, there were 5 tutorials. In the bottom right-hand corner, you'll see a tutorial that shows you how to authenticate to the Management Center API using tokens. The bottom left-hand corner, the tutorial shows you how to interact with the REST API using the Python request module. In the top right-hand corner, there's a tutorial that shows you how to add the Swagger user interface into a web application. Swagger user interface is the older name for OpenAPI that is built into the Management Center's API. And then finally, the 2 other tutorials in top center and top left are showing you how you could integrate the endpoints of both the Management Center and the Firewall threat defense APIs into the Flask application. In this first episode, we're going to take a look at the demo environment. The code used in the demo is available for download if you want to try it out for yourselves. In addition, we're going to take a look at API Explorer, which is the API documentation for the Firewall Management Center, and it's built using OpenAPI. Within the API Explorer, we're going to examine the endpoints that are useful when trying to import data. Okay, let's get started with the demo. So let's take a look at the demo environment. One of the requirements is a Firewall Management Center. This one I'm using is in my home lab. If you decide to try this for yourselves, you will, of course, need a Firewall Management Center as well. But it's important that you have the ability to manage objects. So, for example, if I take a look at object management, you can see there's a host called Attila, which I've got the ability to edit, delete, and I also have the ability to create new objects as well. In addition to the Firewall Management Center, you also need the code. Now, the IDE which I'm using for my project is PyCharm. And in PyCharm, there are a number of scripts, which I'll be talking about shortly. These are pre-configured. And if you decide to do this, you will need to specify the address of your management center in these scripts. Now, in addition to the scripts, there is also an application, app.py. This is actually the Flask application, which I'll be demonstrating to you in step 3 of this video. And that application makes use of a number of templates for rendering data, and which are listed here, which are also pre-configured as well. Okay, so next we're going to take a look at the API Explorer. Now, the API Explorer, which you can see here, this can be accessible from the manager, and it is built using Open API specification, okay, which is a modern name for what used to be called Swagger. Now, in this API Explorer, and we call it that because of the URL you pointed to, you can see the address of my manager there as well. there are a number of endpoints divided into these different groups. So one of these, for example, is the search category. And when searching, you have a number of these endpoints. Now, the nice thing about this API documentation is that you can test things out. So if I wanted to do a search for something, I can use this try it out option. And then it says, well, if you must put in a filter. So if I put in the name of the host Attila, okay, the domain is a requirement, but this API Explorer is automatically able to retrieve the domain because it's built into the manager. So if I did a search for that and then an execute, now we're getting an error there, and the reason for that is my token is invalid. So what I will need to do is just actually to log back in as my user, which I've called Cisco U, and enter my password. Make sure I enter the correct password, like so. And as I log in and authenticate to the server, now it's going to generate a new token. The error before was saying my token had expired, my session had expired. Now if I go back and repeat that and do a search, try it out, the domain which inside these braces is required. The tool gets that, but if I did a search for Attila and then execute, then you can see that this time that's worked successfully. It sent a GET request. Now this tool does actually show you what the commands would look if you were using the curl tool, a very popular tool for working with APIs. We're going to be using requests module as that's something that can be integrated into applications. But notice when we do a search for this host, one of the things it does is it returns the object ID for this host, and that can be quite useful. So I'm just going to copy that. So, and then if I close this down for the moment, now in addition to a search, one of the things that you might want to do is to actually delete that object. And actually it's in this object category. If you search very carefully through this list of endpoints, you can see these object hosts. Now, if you wanted to delete an object, take a few moments to examine this. The domain ID is required. It's inside these braces, but also you're expected to put in the ID of the object you want to delete. In the previous endpoint, I copied to the clipboard the ID of the object Attila. So if I said, look, this time I'd like to delete the object, and I want to try this out, it's automatically retrieved the domain based on the user who's logged into this tool. But the only way I can delete an object is place the ID of the object I want to delete. So if I submit that and then execute, okay, it's actually deleted the object. I've got a successful message for that. And to verify that that object is deleted, if I go back now to do a search, try it out and do a search for Attila and execute. And this time it's an error, not an error code, code 200. That was successful. There was no object with that, so it's returned nothing. Okay. Now, the key part of this demo is the fact that this is all to do with bulk import, importing data. So if I go back to that object category, this time I wanted to add objects. Okay. Now, when I want to, and I'm not going to add objects this way, but when I want to add objects, okay, you've seen me try it out and then execute, but I don't particularly want to do that. But what I wanted to show you is if I wanted to post an object, well, actually, if I did try it out, it would show you that curl command. But here I can say, do I want to post a single object, or do I want to do a bulk post, which is actually what I do want to do. So if I select that example for a bulk post, oh, sorry, I meant to do that up here. Now what this is showing me, if you look very carefully, is that the request body should be application JSON. So the API is expecting me to provide this as JSON data. And in JSON, we have these square brackets, which is showing that this is a JSON array. And inside that JSON array, we have a JSON object, followed by a comma, and then a second JSON object. So I've got an array consisting of two JSON objects, and then each JSON object consists of the host information. Okay, so if I wanted to successfully import that data, then I have to make sure that it's in that format. Okay, so that's the end of step one. So we saw that the demo environment requires a management center that you have write access to, as well as an IDE, such as PyCharm, in which to place the demo files. We also saw that the API Explorer, built into the management center, complies with OpenAPI, and you can test out the endpoints within that API without the requirement for additional software. In the next episode, we're going to examine Python scripts.